Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, here today to talk about Dark Night of the Soul, a treatise by Saint John of the Cross. Apologies, first of all, I think I might be coming down with a cold or something, allergies, I don't know. We're in a dry season here. So obviously with fall, with the weather changing, it sets off, these symptoms, whatever they might be. Happy Sunday to you all. It's a shame that the Vikings couldn't pull it out against the Lions. It was a great game, though, so hats off to the Lions. They're a hell of a team. But anyway, the Dark Night of the Soul. St. John of the Cross has been one of the doctors of the church I've been meaning to read for quite some time now. Obviously, if you hear anything about St. John of the Cross, it's well known that he is very influential Christian, Catholic, mystic through his poetry writing, but then I would say predominantly, even more so than the poetry writing he did, was it was a lot of analysis. He would do a lot of self-analysis of his own work, of his own poetry. And this is a Dover Thrift edition. It's only about 110 pages or so, very short. Very short, but at the same time, very loaded with just intensive analysis that he does of his own poetry. And this isn't even a complete work, unfortunately. So we'll get into that a little bit here. So a little bit of background about St. John of the Cross. So I'll preface this by saying I'm no expert on the life and the history of St. John of the Cross, but he was a figure from the 16th century. He was Spanish, and he he went through the process to become a monk. I believe he was originally going to join the Carthusian order. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Carthusian order, they're still around, still active to this day. I think it's probably widely accepted that the Carthusian brothers, the Carthusian monks, there might be Carthusian sisters, nuns as well, I'm not sure. But the Carthusian order, they are probably the most intensive out of all of the monastic orders. They're confined to a cell. They tend over a garden that can be used for community living. I think most of their days are spent in silence. They might only have one outdoor period during the week where they can engage in spoken dialogue with others in the community. I think they're only allowed to see their family once a year, maybe. Only allowed to write like a finite, maybe like 5 to 10 handwritten letters to people every year. So it's a very intense order. So John of the Cross, he was going to join. He was thinking about joining the Carthusian order, but then he met Teresa of Avila, fellow doctor of the church, of course, centuries later. She is well known for her seven interior mansions, seven interior castle. I forget what the work is called. She was very influential. She was a Carmelite nun. She convinced him to join the Carmelite order, and together, John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila, they were part of a big. So they were active in the Counter-Reformation. Mid to into the the latter half of the 16th century. So, obviously the Protestant Reformation, I think it was October of 1517, when Martin Luther nailed the theses to the wall of the church. And so, you have the Council of Trent after that, a lot of Counter-Reformation movement within the Catholic Church following that. And John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila were very active. But one thing, I think their big lasting legacy beyond their personal writing and their works of great thought, philosophy, analysis, was that they created the Discalced Carmelite order, or the Discalced Carmelite movement. Essentially, Discalced Carmelite means barefoot Carmelite. But I think it was that in the light of the Protestant Reformation, the Carmelite order, there were many within the order that felt that they were growing more distanced to the original, to that order that was founded on Mount Carmel in Israel many centuries prior. And so I believe it was the likes of John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, to kind of, I think, bring a sect of the order. And there is a Carmelite and there's a Discalced. There's like the Calced and Discalced Carmelites still to this day, to like kind of bring it more in line to at least what they viewed were the traditional bearings of the Carmelite order. Very fascinating, very interesting. John of the Cross, as a result, was very heavily persecuted as a result. He was, I think, arrested by his fellow brothers, imprisoned, was only allowed, a little meal to pray the liturgy of the hours, things like that, very restricted. And he died, I believe he was not super young for the time. I think he was in his mid to late 40s when he died. But one of the great tragedies, I think, of John of the Cross, and maybe it's not a tragedy because it wasn't his death that prevented this, but we have a work such as Dark Night. So Dark Night within Dark Night of the Soul. Dark Night of the Soul itself is a poem. Now, I believe this poem, Dark Night of the Soul, he analyzed it in two broader works. So one work which I've yet to read. I just got his the collected works of St. John of the Cross because I am very intrigued just upon reading this. There is the Ascent of Mount Carmel, and then, or Carmel or Carmel, I don't know how you pronounce that. And then there is Dark Night. This Dover Thrift edition has Dark Night. It's about, it's a treatise that's a little over 100 pages long. The Ascent of Mount Carmel is a little bit longer. It's about 300 pages. So the way that this is structured is John of the Cross, he begins with this poem, Dark Night of the Soul. It's a very short poem. Here's what this poem essentially is about. John of the Cross is trying to document and extrapolate what the spiritual formation process is like for a soul that is keen and oriented, or wants to be oriented towards God, towards a figurehead, wants to be oriented towards God, but the soul in desire to become divine, to kind of shed its human trappings, perhaps its fatalistic trappings, and ascend into a unity with divine love. That's a lot. I'm sure many Christian scholars would agree that that is the ultimate hope, right? Would be to get to that point of assimilation, union with divine love. Some would argue that you can never attain that, or you can never hope to attain it. And John of the Cross within this treatise almost indicates that, well, it's probably not possible to achieve such union within our own lifetimes. It is only in a purgatory setting, in an afterlife, potentially, at best, the most one could hope for. But within this, he breaks down the lines. He breaks down the stanzas, and shows what a purgative dark night of the soul looks like, in which the soul is eviscerated of its sinful trappings, as John of the Cross kind of looks at it and terms it, orients it towards, love, charity, mercy, tenderness, into an eventual union. That's what this whole thing is concerned with. Although, interestingly enough, so when I say that this work is a tragedy, what I mean by that is that John of the Cross, he only analyzes about a stanza and a half, 2 stanzas at most, of his poem. And there's a footnote at the end of this that says, well, the saint never returned to work on this. It wasn't necessarily because, well, he died, like this is unfinished and he died. He just never returned to it, never returned to writing it. And so unfortunately, we're left with an incomplete analysis. So that might, depending on who you are, that might affect how you view this. So I will read, the poem is very short. I will read it here just so you have some context with what this analysis is about. So here are the stanzas of the soul, the dark night. This is the first stanza. On a dark night, kindled in love with yearnings, oh, happy chance! I went forth without being observed, my house being now at rest. The second stanza. In darkness and secure, by the secret ladder disguised, oh, happy chance! In darkness and in concealment, my house being now at rest. The third stanza. In the happy night, in secret when none saw me, nor I beheld aught, without light or guide save that which burned in my heart. Fourth stanza. This light guided me, more surely than the light of noonday, to the place where he, well I knew who, was awaiting me, a place where none appeared. The fifth stanza. O night that guided me, O night more lovely than the dawn, O night that joined beloved with lover, lover transformed in the beloved. 6. Upon my flowery breast, kept wholly for myself alone. There he stayed sleeping, and I caressed him, and the fanning of the cedars made a breeze. The seventh stanza. The breeze blew from the turret as I parted his locks. With his gentle hand he wounded my neck, and caused all my senses to be suspended. I remained lost in oblivion. My face I reclined on the beloved. All ceased, and I abandoned myself, leaving my cares forgotten among the lilies. So there we go. There we have it. The 8 stanzas of Dark Night of the Soul. Now, part of the problem with this, he only actually analyzes the first 2 stanzas. So stanzas 3 through 8, sorry if you're looking for that. If you're looking for a complete analysis, you're not going to find it here. But what he goes into is on a dark night. Now, on that first line alone, I mean, good grief, he spends 50 or 60 pages just on the first line alone. On a dark night. Now, what this dark night means is that the soul is put through an immense and intensive trial period, wherein all of its predilections towards inherent sin is stripped away. It is a matter, as John of the Cross kind of states, of balancing the sensual self that is in tune with human desires, with the spiritual self, that one that side of the self that is reaching and yearning for something more divine, something greater. It is purged within that, but he views the dark night as being something that the purgative dark night is imbued on the human through love from the divine, through love from God. But it doesn't seem that way through the suffering individual, the deprived, the individual that they view themselves as being deprived of love from God. But that is necessary in the eyes of John of the Cross to completely strip away just about everything. And then eventually you'll get kind of the unity and a merging of the spiritual self with the sensual self in a way that it can orient itself completely to God. That is what John of the Cross. And of course it is an oversimplification, because he spends like 60 single spaced pages going into this. I'm just trying to kind of get that point across for what he means. Now, he views a dark night too as being a dark night, not because it is something inherently untoward or something sinister, but rather it is something of light and love. He compares it to on a sunny day, you look at the sun. You might look at it for a little too long and you get a lot of spots in your eyes. Eventually your vision is obscured. It might be clouded over a little. He views that as exactly what is happening during a purgative dark night. When your soul is purged through a divine power and divine love and transformative fire, because that's essentially what it is, what it is he's describing. It is like darkness, because when you stare at a pure light source too long, it becomes almost like darkness. And when you have all that within you, it strips it all away. So then, kindled in love with yearnings, he talks about the soul in desire for love. It is something that a flame, when it catches to wood, it kind of darkens it. It really takes hold. It builds the heat until the heat can almost it can kindle into a fire within, until that fire of love and the oh happy chance. He goes into very deeply talking about the Song of Songs within this as well, the canticles. He views it to a lot of like the bride's descriptions within the Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon, a one of the more beautiful books of poetry in the Old Testament. And I went forth without being observed. That to do so, going without being observed is to do so inwardly. And then my house being now at rest in darkness and secure. We are secure because we're getting kind of pummeled with divine influence and divine love and divine lightness that turns into a dark night. And so we are secure even though we're suffering. We are secure because that suffering is imputed upon us by a divine influence, by the secret ladder disguised. And we are ascending towards that perfect union, towards that perfect love. But we are disguised because to do so disguised is necessary, to kind of hold off the influence of Satan, of a dark one, or something like that. In darkness and in concealment we move. So, but that's really all he gets into. And of course, again, this is a big oversimplification. This is just the gist. Summarizing it in a few minutes, this is just the gist of what he is talking about. So it's great. It's a lot of food for thought. It's a lot of food for if you are a person of religious inclination, of what that means to try to be more than yourself, to try to step above human predilections, tendencies, desires, and try to raise yourself to something greater. And to do so, you have to leave a lot behind. And so this purgative dark night that John of the Cross talks about, I think, at least in my mind, in my viewpoint, in my experiences, it kind of makes sense. In looking towards perfect love, ascending a ladder, where more of yourself is stripped away until you can hope to achieve that unity with the divine. It's very interesting. So, this is just the first a little bit of going through John of the Cross's works that I will go through. So, Dark Night of the Soul by Saint John of the Cross. If you have read it, let me know what you think about it. And as always, I will see you guys next time.